Hello, welcome to a Sunday, it's not quite afternoon, morning, good ass feed where we're going to make salsa as promised. And so I spared you the drudgery of watching me cut vegetables, but we have our ingredients here. We've got some diced onion. And this is kind of like, it doesn't have to be fancy, it can be whatever you've got. So we had a mix of red and white onions, so I just diced up the ones that were most likely to go bad soon. Similarly, tomatoes are the same. These are a mix of Roma and just some like beefy, steaky sandwich tomatoes. That's not a technical term, but you know what I'm saying. Oh yeah, hello, Heather, behind the camera.
Hi.
She's running the camera duty today.
I'm sorry.
This is our first time doing something like this, but if Alton Brown can do it, we can do it, right?
That's right, on his iPhone.
And then last we've got some diced up jalapenos. See, some of the membrane is kept, some isn't. We'll get to that in a minute. We've got some limes and some garlic. Yeah. So the gist of it is that we're not going to cook anything because salsa is way better when you don't. But the reason why it's cooked at the store is because they have to preserve it. But we don't. We're going to eat it like immediately, like right now. As soon as we're done, we're going to eat it. So we don't have to cook it. All we have to do is food processor it. And so this is actually going to happen in 2 shifts. Oh yeah, somebody at home is probably like, how much of this stuff do we need? Don't worry about it. The most important thing is that you have an equal quantity by volume of onions and tomatoes. So we got about the same amount. That's the most important thing. If you get that right, the rest we're gonna fix while we taste it. But yeah, you're gonna go right in with all the onions. A few on the floor. It's traditional and necessary to throw a few on the floor. And in there with it, this is probably going to drive you crazy too, that I'm not going to be measuring too much, but Heather did insist that I have a measurement here. And so I'm going to go in with a 1/2 cup. This is about 600 grams of onions by weight, a weight ahead of time. So if you really, really have to know, it's about a 1/2 cup of vinegar, but it doesn't really matter because we're going to fix it in the tasting later. This is just enough to make it turn into a little blend. And you may ask, like, why do I have to chop this stuff ahead of time if I'm just going to food process it? Well, I once worked with a very lazy man that ran a restaurant, and he didn't do that. And what happens is you get big old freaking chunks of things in the mouths of your guests or your family. And salsa is more about like the blend of ingredients than it is about big old hunking chunks of onion. Nobody wants to get a big bite of raw onion. Well, maybe some people might.
The peanut butter and onion people on the internet last night.
Yeah, we saw, what was it, a peanut butter and onion sandwich, which is like peak quarantine cuisine. Okay, and so what we ended up with was a pretty purple because of the red onions, but we ended up with a mixture really of just blended onion and vinegar that we're gonna go into our mixing bowl. And so the idea is that because we want different textures out of the tomatoes and the onions, we're going to blend them separately and stir them together later. Because if we did the tomatoes the way we did the onions, it would all just turn into a big mess. Speaking of, and you don't have to rinse this thing out between, it's salsa, relax. Relax. In with the tomatoes in the processor.
Also, they won't all fit.
They won't. That's actually a really good reason too. And then, yes, tomatoes, about 600 grams of tomatoes. Where's my 1/2 cup? In with another 1/2 cup, and then a little change of vinegar. The thing about like making salsa this way, it takes more salt and more vinegar than you would ever imagine. It really, really does. And the tomatoes, we don't want to get too crazy with it because like you kind of want like a little bit of chunky tomato in there. And so it's really just to kind of break it up and yeah. Okay, and so now we've got the tomatoes of the ideal chunkiness and consistency, right? Or pour it off, but save a little bit, save a little bit. And then the last bit, I like to save a little bit of both to give them something to chew on. And then I go in with my jalapenos. You're not gonna want to touch your eye if you do it this way. I'm a trained professional, trained by repeatedly injuring myself.
What kind of professional?
Content creator.
Jalapeno handle?
A professional. Jalapeno professional. Never mind. So with the peppers, everybody says the seeds make them hot, up to and including Gordon Ramsay. They wrong. It's not the seeds. It's this white bit. It's called the placenta, or the membrane. See that? That's what makes it hot. Like that's what actually produces the capsaicin. So if you're putting a bunch of peppers in here, you might want to depending on your intended audience, you might want to cut out this bit and just dice the rest. I do like a half and half because I don't want to like lose the heat altogether, but also, you know, not everybody's trying to light themselves up at breakfast and stuff. So you end with that. And then this is another one where you're like, well, why do I have to do this if I'm going to food processor it? Well, for a better product, take your microplane. This part you really don't have to do, but I find the garlic gets a lot more. Oh yeah, this is a clove of garlic. And I just microplane it in. And what that does is keep me from getting big old honking mouthfuls of garlic in either my mouth or the mouths of my family. And
the food processor is inconsistent.
Yeah, the food processor is, I mean, it does a job, but it's not magical. It integrates things together pretty good, but it doesn't magically locate every tiny bit of chunks and obliterate it. And what this does is break it down so tiny that it's just going to become part of the liquid backdrop to things. 3. And you can kind of use your own taste preferences when you're using the garlic. Not everybody super likes a lot of garlic. I kind of like a pungent garlic in my salsa. And the longer this sits in the fridge, like for a day or two, it won't. But if it could, the flavors would meld even further and intensify. And so, yeah, I put my jalapeno, I put my garlic, and then we've got these here lime halves. It's really tempting, really very tempting indeed to zest this.
It's tempting for me. I do it.
And I've done it before, and I stopped because I find the zest doesn't, the part of the lime that we're actually interested in isn't in the zest. It's that citrusy bright juice. And the zest actually is kind of bitter. And so if you must, just a little tiny bit of zest, but not very much because it actually can wreck things pretty quick. I like to go with like 2 limes worth of juice. It may not get you, lime juice isn't actually nearly as acidic as white vinegar, so it's not going to get you to the acid level that you probably want. But that's, again, we're going to fix it. A lot of this hinges upon fixing it once it's all mixed together, just to your personal taste, because it's really hard with fresh produce to tell exactly what it's going to taste like if you don't cook it or do anything with it. Oh yeah, last, you can't have a food video without talking about kosher salt. Here it is. Here's my kosher salt. And I'm just going to go in with a little bit. Like I said, it takes more salt than you'd think to make the salsa good.
That was like a Gordon Ramsay teaspoon.
That's a teaspoon. A Gordon Ramsay teaspoon of olive oil.
That last jalapeno part with the,
that was just a visual aid.
Just to
show the placenta.
You can throw it in there.
Well, no, because the food process, then you have these big old honking chunks. We worked so hard.
We
for
did. You're right.
Texture, and then you whip this together. Yeah, there you go. And this part, I just blend into oblivion, and it's not going to turn a pretty color, but that's okay. What this is going to do is integrate the salt, the lime juice, the peppers, the garlic into something we can mix with everything else. And then comes the fun part where we just taste it over and over and over.
My favorite part.
All right. I think we've got that where it needs to be. It's going to come over here. And so we've got our big bowl with our onions, our tomatoes all dumped in. And now we're going to add this last bit. And mix her up. And so this is the elephant in the room right here.
It's my favorite elephant.
Some people really, really like cilantro. Some people really, really, really don't like cilantro.
We really like it.
We really like it. And so in that last step, you could just put the cilantro in there. Or if you're like me and you forgot, you just take a ladle, take a couple ladles of your mixture, take a big old honking of your cilantro.
Oh, I would double down.
Like that. It can't, people find it to be soapy, some folks. I don't. I find it to be freaking delicious. But it's up to you. This part is totally optional. You're going to end up with really good salsa either way. And maybe in a future video, I'll show you how you can actually end up with really good salsa without the tomatoes also. And make like a, salsa verde. There. Oh, that smell, dude. I wish you could.
I can smell it. I love cilantro.
All right, so our cilantro mixture is going in there.
Zone.
Yeah, you are a little bit. Sorry. All right, cilantro's gone in.
Oh,
Chinga.
ignore that
right.
mess. It's fine.
Yeah, everything's fine.
We'll clean up after.
This is what it looks like when a Muppet cooks. And so yeah, really you just mix this together because now you see how we have a difference in texture. You've got little flaky cilantro leaves. You got the onions pureed into oblivion. But then the tomatoes are nice and chunky. So that's the idea of doing it separately. Also, it's too big for the food processor. But perfect. All right. So now.
Slide these chips over here for you.
got our tiny tasting spoon. And so, okay, this isn't going to taste right.
It
It's
might.
not.
Sometimes.
Oh, man, never. It never happens. So you're going to taste it and you're going to be like, what have I done? And that's okay. Because the only two things you could have done wrong is not enough salt, not enough vinegar, or too much and too much. But you probably didn't at this point because we've been very cautious with it.
Uh-huh.
Pretty close.
I feel
And so-
like I should also take a little chip here.
Oh, you're just gonna, how are you going to sneak that past the camera? This
See the little...
How's that? It's close, but it's not quite.
There's salt.
And so, again, the two things that are probably wrong, salt, vinegar, because it tastes way more than you would ever think. And so first we're going to go in with, there it is. Now you want to start being a little more careful with your ingredients. That's a good hearty 2-finger pinch of salt. I'll go with a couple of those. I'm just going to try to like coax it to the place where I want it to be. If you try to fix the acid level with lime juice, you're going to go through every single lime in the entire United States of America. Don't do that. Just use vinegar.
It's also already pretty limey, if we're being honest.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You can end up having too much lime flavor and not enough just tart. Because that turns out that just tart and that saltiness are really like actually the core draw. They keep you coming back for another bite of salsa. All the flavors are so important. The tomatoes, everything comes together. But without the acid punch of the vinegar and the salt, it's not good enough. It doesn't move the earth.
So good.
One more. You always want to make sure you taste it without chips first.
Not me.
Because if it's not good without chips, then it's not good. Little tiny bit.
The only time that might be different is if you're buying like the HEB chips that they make in the store and they oversalt them.
Oh, dude, it's such a tragedy. They make like homemade corn tortilla chips there in the store, and they're beautiful, and they're just like a restaurant, and they're so delicious. And whoever is back there with that salt goes so berserk with the salt that you can't eat them.
Yep.
And if they just calm down, and the funny part is the back says lightly salted, but nah, they're not telling that to the person making them. They got like the Swedish chef from the Muppets back there just with the salt. And so once you get it to where you're happy with it on a spoon, then you can put it on a chip. And the chip should be, the salt should be such that the chip adds a little bit of salt because it's going to, and that's not unwelcome. Look at that though. Look at.
I'm not very good at the focusing part of this. I want it to be like my phone does. Is it good? All right. I have to come back in.
Salsa cam.
Salsa cam. Ooh, look. Oh. Somewhere in there it's going to focus.
It might not.
Mm.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
And for your beautiful guests, you just ladle a bit into a party bowl. Like that. And provide some chips.
Ooh, grab the guac.
Oh, yeah. And if you're an extra good host, you prepared guacamole as well. And now your guests can dive into a restaurant experience.
Or your wife. And there's some cats.
Cats are fighting. Everything's fine. They're excited about the salsa too, aren't we all? But yeah, you can provide a beautiful restaurant quality salsa to your friends. And if you wanted to kick it up even further, you could actually roast some of these vegetables ahead of time before you cut them up. And you get a little bit of a different flavor.
Like Asanar does.
Yeah, that restaurant on the Riverwalk called Asanar. Their salsa is ridiculous, and it's all super roasted. It's really good. You can also, like I said, you can omit the tomatoes. Maybe I'll do a video on that at some point, and go with just jalapenos and make like this really intense but really good green sauce. Maybe we'll do a guacamole video. I don't know. Tell me what you think. But yeah, I hope this was informative. I hope you end up with some really good salsa. How bad could it be? That's very close. But yeah, if you follow these directions, the worst case scenario is that you just need to jack around with the salt and the vinegar a little bit, and you'll be fine. So I hope it demystifies salsa because there's actually nothing to it.
Can I also say something?
Yes.
Similarly, if you do not own a food processor, you can throw all of this in the Vitamix, blend it to oblivion, and it will still be delicious.
It'll still be delicious. You just won't get that
Chunky.
The chunkiness won't quite be there. But is it focusing on that or no?
I think so.
The chunkiness won't be there. And to me, that's the best part about the food processor is that you can split it off and do it the way you want. But a Vitamix just splits it all. It'll end up with
I make it
it'll still
in
be
the
pretty
Vitamix.
good. Like it's still pretty good because the flavor is going to be awesome. So yeah, thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. We might do some more kitchen videos now that we have the logistics partially sort of
we'll
worked
see.
out. I mean, we'll see when we go edit if this was okay or not, but it seems all right. You click the bell to be notified.
Ooh, excuse me.
Excuse me. We'll be notified every time there's a new piece of content. A new piece of content for you to consume on your favorite rectangle. And click like. I think we earned it. Yeah, just click like. I mean, look at what do you want?
We made some salsa.
What do you want? What do you want, man? Just click it. And I hope you have a great afternoon ahead. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and I will catch you next time
On Gen TV.
on Good Ass Feed.